So most people run their automations through things like Zapier, Make, n8n, all these cloud hosted servers. That's all okay, but the problem is that they're run through somebody else's computers and through someone else's servers. And to you, the user, you have no idea which server it is or who it belongs to. So they can log it, they can analyze it, and they can use your data for whatever they want. The problem is truly that businesses don't want personal information like PII, consumer information, revenue, financial data to be in another server or a place where they don't know where it is and can't control it. So it's much more important as a business to own your data and understand that it's never going to leave where you host it. So that's the importance of keeping data private and why closed source LLMs and also cloud hosted server platforms like n8n, Zapier, and Make, it's difficult for businesses to use it because they want to keep their data safe and their customer data safe as well. So in this particular video, I'm going to go over how you can actually self-host and own your server so that you own the data, you own the AI, and you own the automations, and they stay contained within your own server, which means they're on your own computer, but we're going to use a virtual computer instead. The best part about this whole system is that a beginner can do it. You can figure out how to use your own data, use your own systems, and use your own automations to work with businesses or work within an internal team to run financial analysis, to make sure that you're using customer data properly. And for instance, if your business has a privacy notice, you're going to want to stay in that zone of not leaking anybody else's data into the ether without them knowing it. So this is very important for things like CRM data, sales, financials, accounting. All these automations that are so important and can be used in cloud servers can also be used internally through an environment that you hold dearly to yourself and that is owned by you and only you. This is going to be built on simple building blocks with a Docker, a firewall, a VPS, which is run through a platform called Hostinger, and then obviously an LLM, which we're going to be using Ollama today, and then also an n8n platform. I want you to think of this as you building your own ChatGPT plus Zapier or n8n or Make under your own roof, and you control it 100% of the time. Okay, so basically the old way of doing things. I'm going to explain both ways. This first one is going to be the old way. The second way is going to be the new way of how we're actually going to build it today in our automation. So the old way, cloud-based and AI and automations. So if you've ever done something like this, you've probably used a tool like Zapier, Make, n8n. These are all cloud-based automation platforms. Picture this as your data going out into a server that you don't know where it's at, you don't know where it's hosted, you don't know who actually owns the server that's being used to analyze everything within the automation. You have no control over it. Basically just leaving it out in the open for anybody to walk by and see it or use it or analyze it however they want. Same thing with cloud source LLMs. So a cloud source LLM is things like OpenAI, Gemini, Claude. You pay for these services. In return, you get data. So, for instance, you pay for an OpenAI Plus account. This allows you to either use OpenAI's API system or actually put your input into the user interface like ChatGPT. Basically, a closed source LLM is getting your outputs and using it to either build their models. They're charging you for it, and you don't know where that data is being hosted through. It could be hosted through a computer, it could be hosted through a cloud-based server. You just don't know. You're not sure. And one of the reasons why these closed source LLMs are difficult to use for things like internal business processes is because it's unsafe. Your data is not housed in a way that protects it, and you technically don't own it. So those are all platforms like OpenAI, Gemini, Claude, Perplexity, those things. As you can see, the arrows, which are your data, are going in all different directions. Like I said, same type of deal. It's hosted on an unknown server where you don't have control over it. So here's a super simple analogy that I like to make when comparing cloud-sourced or cloud-based server automation platforms or open LLMs or closed-source LLMs that you actually pay for, is think of it like a shared workspace. Like you basically, anybody can see your computer screen. Anybody can just walk by and see what you're doing. Basically, it's like renting out space in a shared workspace. The best way I can explain a self-hosted or self-based server where it's on your computer is like you owning the office building. So you control the doors, you control the locks, you control who comes in, who comes out, and you have complete control over your data or what's going on. Nobody else has access to it, you have full control. All right, so now I'm gonna go over the new way of self-hosted automation, which is super important if you're part of a team. If you work for a business that requires automations, like let's say you're part of a new sort of spearhead in a company and you want to make sure that the data that you're actually analyzing through maybe an LLM or using in an automation isn't compromised by cloud hosting. You actually want to self-host it and make sure your business's data is safe. Or if you own a business and you just want to keep your data safe and want to keep it protected, especially if you're using a private policy with a CRM. So if you're doing any sort of contact forms on your website, you want to make sure that data is safe and the people that actually put that information in aren't going to have their data compromised. Like they're not going to lose their email, they're not going to lose their name, phone number, whatever sort of thing that goes into that contact form. They can trust that because of that privacy policy, it's safe. So this is the new way self-hosted automation. Pretend that this box here is your server, right? This would be the self-hosted space where you have an LLM, which today we're using Ollama. You have a firewall, which is protection. You have your data, which is going out in these arrows, but it's being blocked. So it's just happening within this square. You have a Docker, which basically just sets up the type of environment that you'd have on your server. And then you have n8n, which would be the platform in which you build automations. And nothing out here of this box is getting leaked. It's very important to understand that this is exactly how a container self-hosted server works. And then what we're doing today. So these are the different things that you're going to need for this particular video. You're going to need a Hostinger account. It's just a VPS for you to set up a virtual environment, a cloud self-hosted space, which is basically like your own computer, but virtually. The Docker, which is just a dock that is going to be setting up your environment within that VPS. n8n, so you need an n8n account. And then an Ollama LLM, which is also just another, you can think of that as another AI LLM, just like OpenAI, Perplexity, Claude, Gemini, like those, except Ollama is a little bit different, and we're going to go over that in a little later in the video. I wanted to add quick that this whole process of creating your own personal AI automation environment is completely beginner. Like, you don't need to have any background in coding. This literally uses no code. All you need to do is know how to copy and paste and click. Essentially, you don't need to be a technical artist. You don't need to have any sort of seasoned experience in automations, and you don't need to be an engineer to do all this. So I'm going to break it down extremely simple and make sure that you get it step by step so you're not missing anything, and you go from having no sort of background in creating an automation space to now you are self-hosting your own environment on your own with no code. All right, so I'm on the Hostinger website. Make sure that you're on VPS hosting. This is super important because the first time I did this, I didn't know what I was doing, quite frankly, on the Hostinger platform. So I chose domain instead. Make sure that you're on VPS hosting. So if you're on VPS hosting, you'll see something like this. 67% off AI managed VPS hosting, Black Friday sale, whatever. This is during Black Friday, but I'm going to claim deal. Normally it would just have a button here. And then you want this to be super simple, but you also want it to fit into your budget. So just to run a basic AI model, you don't need a bunch of space. You don't need a bunch of memory. So you could do it. You could get away with it with 4 GB RAM. I did the 8 GB, for instance, and it works great. Obviously, stay within your budget, and later on, if you want to run more automations and you want to have a bigger model running, then you upscale. But until then, do what works best for your situation. All right, so I added it to my cart. So all I'm gonna do is go down to here, and I have 1 month selected. You can do anything from 12 months to 24 months. So what I'm going to do is actually go down a little bit further and select the operating system. So this is pretty much choosing like iPhone, Android, if I had a comparable like way to explain it. I chose Ubuntu. Obviously the most updated version is the most important because it has the fail-safes, it has the guardrails. So I'm going to confirm that, and then I'm going to continue. So before we even set up the VPS, you're going to want to choose a domain name. So you can enter whatever domain you want. If you work for a specific business, you can put that name in there, because everything's going to start with n8n dot whatever your domain is. So make sure you choose a quality domain. Like I'm going to go n8n dot Jackson, or I'm going to go jackson.com. Probably exists, but I could just go Jackson Automations or JR Automations. Okay, so that one's, let's just go 37. Okay, so yeah, I could claim a domain free for a year. I'm not going to do that because I already have a domain, but that's how you do it. Alright, so now that I've actually completed payment, I'm going to go down to here in VPS, and you're going to have to actually add one, but I'm going to click manage, which is mine. As you can see, I have all this information here. Data is coming out, CPU usage, memory usage, disk usage, everything that's going on with my server. But it's good that I have all these analytics because I know that it's working and I know that it's me that's using it. So I can tell, if something happens where the CPU usage goes crazy high and I'm not using it, or incoming traffic goes crazy high and I'm not using it, you know exactly what's happening. Alright, so the next step is you're going to be given an SSH root. So I have mine blurred out here, but essentially you're going to copy this and you're going to click on this terminal up here. So I have that already built out. I'm in my terminal currently, so I know what's going on here. So I'm ready to rock. Essentially, this next thing, you're going to make sure you're accessing it. So you're going to copy and paste that SSH root number into this terminal, just right here. And then once you copy paste it, you're going to hit enter, and you should be logged into your root, which means that you've already created a server and you're currently logged in. Alright, so you're currently in your terminal, you're currently accessing your server, and the next thing you're going to do is paste this apt update and symbol apt upgrade -y. And I'll have all of these commands in the description of the video so you know exactly where to get them. But basically what this is going to do, this is going to update your platform or your server so it's ready to take in a Docker. Which your Docker is just a document that allows you to add and port different things into your server. So for instance, we're going to port in the n8n platform, which is another server. We're going to port in a Ollama AI model, and then we're also going to put a firewall for protection. And I'll explain that in that step. Okay, the next thing we're going to paste in is a Docker code. Now, think of a Docker as like an app manager. It's going to manage everything from our firewall, our n8n platform, and then also our AI model. So you can think of it kind of like the App Store, but this manages specifically on your server, and it allows it to be in containers. For instance, all of your different apps, right, which would be like the firewall, the n8n, and the AI model, think of them as apps in containers that are contained within the server. All right, now that we have our Docker installed and we've checked the version, we're gonna create a directory for our file, which is basically just a plan for our Docker to make sure the right programs are in our server. So you can think of it kind of like, I guess a plan, like a strategic plan that you're telling the Docker to use to create something within your server. So we're first creating the directory, so basically creating a folder where this file will be housed. All right, so now that we have our folder created within our server, we will be copying and pasting this text right here, which is going to create a blank file for us to put all the stuff on to tell the server how to run. So it's going to be able to run n8n, Ollama, which is our AI LLM model, and then also our firewall and our proxy. So once you have that step complete, we're going to move on to the next step. All right, so once you've created that blank file within the server, the next step is so you're not writing any code here, but you're going to be copying and pasting this exact file into the server. So I'm going to paste it, and then I'm going to enter it. And what this is just the plan that's going into the server telling it what to do. So once you've done that step, it'll save it, and then you'll Control O, which is Control Open, then Enter, and then Control X, which will exit you out of that file creator, and you should have that file inside your server at that point. All right, so let me explain quick what was in the file that we just pasted into the terminal. So the first one is called Traefik. It's a security gateway that handles HTTPS requests, SSL certificates, routing, encryption, things like that. And it automatically secures your custom domain with Let's Encrypt. So the next one is n8n. This is your no-code automation platform. It's the private version of Zapier, and it's running on your server, and it's under your control. The third and last one is Ollama. This is your local AI engine. It lets you run AI models like Tiny Llama, Gemma, and others without sending any data to OpenAI or other cloud providers. Everything stays within your VPS, so nothing escapes, and because of the encryption with the Traefik, only what you tell it to gets in. And because we described all three in one file, Docker can launch the entire system with a single command in the next step. So the thing that's going to trigger this all to run on one command, like I said in the last step, is called docker-compose.d. So if you copy and paste this and enter it into your server, it's going to parse everything and initiate everything within the server to run. All right, so you've initiated your actual server to run. Now we put in docker ps, which, as you can see in my example, I've already had it running. So you can see that it has my Docker, it has Traefik, it has the Ollama, and they're all connected through n8n. Okay, so you're on the n8n platform, but before we do anything with adding different nodes or adding the actual Ollama native node, what we need to do first is we need to make sure that we're using the right AI model to run the LLM. So you're going to want to paste this into your terminal in Hostinger. It just basically says that we want to execute on the Tiny Llama model instead of something larger that will end up taking more RAM. So this tiny Llama model will work fine for any sort of messaging a model that you want to do. If you do choose to upscale, you're probably going to need to buy a higher RAM space because the larger models require more memory. So this particular model requires the least, I believe. And it still runs pretty well. Like I'm going to show you an example here in the next step where it runs without any problems. So go ahead and click enter. Make sure you have this copy pasted, click enter, and it'll run for a little bit. It'll obviously install, and then you'll be good to go to the next step of actually adding the node to the n8n workflow. Okay, so the next step is actually implementing these systems. So I already have mine built out. All you got to do is copy and paste your URL into this URL space, and it should bring you directly to this page right here, which is your n8n platform, and it's self-hosted. So at the beginning, it'll have you put in your name, your email. It'll ask you a few questions like, are you using this for your own benefit, or are you using it for a business? Those answers don't really matter as long as you understand if you're doing this for a business, you probably want to put that in. If you're doing it just for yourself or your internal business, you can do whatever you want with it. But right now we're just going to test out the model. So I'm going to go into here quick to make sure that it's configured right. So to begin with, you're going to want to connect a credential to it. This is very simple. I'll show you what the platform looks like, but I'm already connected. The base URL is the same for everybody. As long as this is just authenticated and created in your server, this base URL will work without any sort of API key. So all I did was copy and paste this base URL into the credentials, and I named it Ollama Local. You can name it whatever you want. Usually I would do it with the name of the domain that I'm using, but in this case, I'm going to just do that for testing sake. So yeah, that connection will work. Operations as message or model. And then from the model list, if you remember in that step before, we wanted to add Tiny Llama. So we're using Tiny Llama. That's the model that we're going to use in this example. For the content that actually goes into the user message, I'm just going to say, give me 3 great ideas for dinner tonight. So I copied that in, and then you want the simplify output to be true, so you're not getting a bunch of jumbled messes. There's other reasons why, but I'm not going to get into that in this video. So I'm going to execute this step. So it should give me 3 great ideas for dinner tonight. And yes, it did. Okay, so it says grilled steak with roasted Brussels sprouts and caramelized onions, 2 stuffed bell peppers with quinoa, black beans, and seasonal veggies, and then 3 spaghetti squash with sauteed mushrooms, tomatoes, and garlic. And it actually even gave me a 4th. So that just goes to show you that the model actually works, and you just ran an AI model, completely private, self-hosted servers with a firewall, with gating your ports, and you did that all without knowing anything about code. Now you can build whatever automations you want, and you can access this model and this LLM without having to worry about any of your data or your business's data going out the window and you not knowing who has control over it, who can see it, and who can analyze it. So congratulations on doing everything with me, and super proud of you, and we'll continue with the next video on an actual automation that you can use internally within your business using this exact self-hosted server.